You're looking at the 18th fairway, and over on one side is actually the 9th fairway.
First.
If you move your head, we can see the green.
I mean the first fairway. Over there, to my right, in front of that big building with the columns, is the first fairway. And the grandstands over there, that's the 18th fairway. That's the first fairway. Whoops. Over there. That's the third fairway. Good. So, here we are. I don't think, Ken, did we receive any
No questions this week.
questions in the email? So if you have any questions, here we are. Otherwise, I'll share some of the things that have come up in some lessons recently.
I have a question.
Hi, Rocco.
Hi. I played Wednesday night or Wednesday afternoon, and was having trouble hitting my fairway metal. I have some Adams Tight Live fairway metals. Had them a while, but I would a couple of times off the tee is pop them up like an infield fly.
Yes.
I was wondering what I was doing.
I thought that, this is not on the fairway. This is using them on the tee.
Yeah.
Got it. So a fairway metal, when you're on the fairway, do you get to put it up on a tee?
No.
No, you hit it off the grass.
Yeah. No problem there.
How high are you teeing it up on the tee is a question. Because you may be teeing it up higher than you really need to.
Yeah.
That's one possibility. See, it's kind of hard without me seeing it.
Kind of.
But that's a possibility. You know, one of the things that I teach, and I learned this from a teacher, there was a book called Practical Golf by John Jacobs. And it's, he said the golf ball is your teacher. So if it's going up in the air, that means that at impact, there's a lot of loft, or it's going off one of the top grooves in the face, or the angle at which you're impacting it creates a lot of backspin that sends it up. So really, those are the things to explore. It's the same thing as, you know, if the ball is going out there and turning to one side, basically that means that the club head put side spin on it somehow. And it either put side spin on it by the face being perpendicular to the line the ball was going on and the path of the club head cutting across it, one direction or another, or the club head going on a path straight down the line, but the club face open or closed in relation to that line. Those are the physics. So that's what you explore, and that's what the golf ball is teaching you. So I think that's what you have to look into. Now we have the opportunity to have a swing instructor on our Zoom session. Gavin, what are your thoughts on this one? I'm going to call him in.
Yeah, well, I just thinking it's probably a combination of, possibly a little bit, you'd have a little bit too high. I mean, obviously, an Adams club is a low center of gravity club, so there's a lot of weight on the bottom, designed to get it up in the air. And probably like the majority of golfers, the angle of attack is probably fairly steep, probably a little bit from the outside. So you've got all that in combination is going to pop the ball up pretty quickly.
Oh, that's good. That's very helpful. So Rocco, if you're if your swing path goes from outside to in rather than inside to out, you're more likely to pop it up. And that particular club, thank you, Gavin, for pointing that out, is designed to help you get it in the air, correct?
Correct.
It's designed, so the main weight of it is at the bottom. So if you hit it higher on the face, it's going to really pop up in the air. It's meant for playing off the fairway and for helping you get the ball in the air. It's for people who have the opposite problem.
Absolutely.
Popping it up.
I think
So try those things.
So would you tee it down more then? Or tee
Do what?
Yeah.
What Gavin was saying was your attack is too steep, that it's actually coming down, straight down, rather than a sweeping motion. You know, is that if you're making a swing like you would with a 9-iron, that's a pretty much more vertical path into the ball rather than horizontal path into the ball. You don't want purely vertical or purely horizontal, obviously, but a shallower rather than a steeper path is what Gavin was talking about.
Yeah,
sweeping rather than digging,
yeah,
is a way to think of it.
There's a lot of reasons behind, why we get a steep angle of approach into the ball. But I mean, a simple tip, which I normally do to try to get people who don't have the time to overhaul their swing, is just to, before they get on the course, just stand up on, the one side of the tee box where you've got effectively the ball would be above your feet. So you're standing below the tee box and you've got that little incline up to the tee, and just swing your longest club or your hybrid or whatever, and just get the feeling of a more rounded swing. Just as if you're almost baseball style, you're just swinging a little bit more around you. Get the feeling of that and try and take that to the course.
I have one other thing to add. That's very good, and I use that a lot. The baseball swing, T-ball swing. The other thing, and I had this happened with a lesson I just had. It's a person who was she's pretty big and strong, and she was she was hitting kind of fat shots with her irons, and they weren't going very far. And sometimes she'd hit those kind of pop-ups that you talk about off the tee. And it turns out that she was trying to scoop the ball, kind of scoop it up into the air rather than sweep across it. And if you think about it, one of the images I use is if you're standing in a pool with the water, hip, the water level, the height of your hips or your waist, if you want to splash somebody, you don't scoop the water at them. You get a few drops at them that way, just that scooping. But instead, you lead with the heel of your hand and sweep and push, compress the surface of the water that sends it splashing out. So what the solution for her was she felt like at impact, the handle was at or still behind the ball in relation to the target. So they also call it forward shaft lean, so that the handle is just ahead of the ball at impact, so that you're not flipping or scooping under it. So all of those are possibilities. And that did come from the lesson that we had. And the other thing that I think you might find interesting, I always am amazed at the power of visualization. When I visualize that I'm hitting a high iron shot, I hit a higher iron shot. When I visualize that I'm hitting a low punch shot, a low punch shot shows up. Sometimes I'm almost suspicious of it. I feel like, I don't know if you remember the play in the movie The Music Man, but he basically had people imagine that they were playing the instruments. and singing the song so that when they started playing, it would automatically show up. But it is amazingly powerful. So if you visualize that lower trajectory going out, your body-mind system, the whole system, will do its best to fulfill what you're visualizing. When it's a positive visualization with a strong intention. I was playing with another, a good friend of mine, a pro. He's won tournaments. He won 3 tournaments on the Senior European Tour, and he's a fabulous instructor. We were playing together, and I hit one shot, and he said what impressed him about the shot was the force of my intentionality. My whole being seemed to have that intentionality to produce that particular shape and trajectory of shot. And so that's really what you want to do. You want to marshal the forces of your intentionality so that your whole being is intent on producing that particular shape, trajectory, quality, turn, how much turn of that shot in the direction that you want it to go. And so there's a tremendous power to visualization that way. And it made a difference in the last lesson that I had with this woman. The better she was at visualizing her shot, the better the shot came off. And I've actually experienced having my mind completely full of the visualization to the point where I wasn't even focused on a particular feel or swing key. And it just produced it. Now, that doesn't mean that I can visualize a 400-yard drive and it goes 400 yards. It doesn't mean that I can picture my 9-iron going 120 feet in the air like Justin Thomas's might. But it does mean that I can produce within my capabilities the shots that I'm visualizing. So if it's a realistic visualization, that helps a lot too.
You've also pointed out that when you're doing a trouble shot, some weird shot that you really have to work maybe out of the rough and around a tree, that sometimes you're visualizing that so much better than just the stock 9-iron from the middle of the fairway. That
is absolutely true. Thank you, Ken. I'm really glad you brought that up. I call that the choicelessness factor. You know, when you're having a shot out of the rough that has to go under a branch, then fade around in between 2 bunkers and onto the green. It's amazing how many times we pull that shot off because our mind is completely one-pointed, completely focused. In that same round that I was telling you about, that I was also with one of my students, with one of our mutual students, and he was having kind of a rough day, but he hit the shot of the day. He was on hard pan and hit a 5-wood 200 yards within 15 feet of the pin onto the green. We heard the sound of the shot, and I went, what the heck was that? It was the 5-wood hitting off of dirt and carried 200 yards, landed on the green and rolled up and stopped within 15 feet of the hole. Amazing. But then when he had a 9-iron from the middle of the fairway, he missed the green. Because he didn't have that intentionality and that choiceless quality to the shot. And I asked him, what was your swing key on hitting that 5-wood? And he said he didn't have one. He just pictured the shot and he knew that he had to make a clean contact on that ball. And that reminds me of another important thing in instruction. When you give yourself an instruction, or when you receive an instruction from a teacher, try to make it and try to ask for from the teacher a what instruction, W-H-A-T. What do you want me to do? What do you want to happen? As opposed to how do I do that? Not a how instruction. So the making solid contact with the back of the ball, that's what he wanted the club head of his 5-wood to do. That's a what. He wasn't thinking about how he was going to do that. He wasn't thinking about, I have to turn my shoulders to 90 degrees, or I have to stop with the club head parallel, the club shaft parallel at the top, and then start down with my lower butt. None of that. It was just put the club head on the ball this way. That's a what instruction. So that's going to be very helpful to you. There's a little crossover when you come to a feel, because it's almost a how, but it's not a how and a technique. And that's what Gavin was referring to is feel like you're making a baseball swing. But it doesn't tell you how to make a baseball swing. It doesn't say, now, as you take the club back, you cross your left forearm over your right, and then as you go through, roll it over so that your right forearm is over your left. That's how to do it. Just feel like you're swinging a baseball bat. That's a what instruction. Because it's something you already know how to do. One of the most common that I give is feel like you're skipping a rock. I use this in a class I taught. We were in the classroom, and I ask a typical question for everybody. It's kind of it's like my Rorschach. I don't know if you know what a Rorschach test is. That in psychology, they hold up these ink blots that are just randomly formed. But they say, tell me what you see. And then people draw from their experience. And it basically tells the psychologist how that person looks at the world. So I tell people, tell me something about your golf game. And how they respond tells me how they're looking at their golf game. If they start with a list of problems that they're having, I know that they go negative. If they start with, well, I'm a great driver of the ball. Oh, okay. So we're going to start with strengths and then get to the areas that need improvement. Well, in one class, I asked this question of this one woman in the class. She took out a piece of paper and handed me, she said, these are the 12 things that my golf pro wants me to do on every swing. And yes, as all of you are laughing, everybody in the class laughed. Now, 4 of them had to do with her setup. So the other 8 had to do with the swing. And I looked at them, and it brought something to mind, and I asked her if she knew how to skip a rock. And right there in the classroom, I said, pretend that you're skipping a rock. And she did a really good job of it. I said, oh, that was very good. Do it one more time. I said, now, what I want you to do is do it in slow motion. And so she starts by turning away from the direction that she's going to throw it. And I said, oh, that checks 1. Turn your shoulders away from the target. And where's your weight? She said, kind of on the inside of my right foot. I said, check 2. And then her right arm was very vertical at the top, before she was going to throw. And I said, oh, check 3. And then she started moving, and she started with her legs, check 4. Her right elbow came really close to her right hip as she was going through, check. We checked all 8 off, and it was all from skipping a rock. And so I said, when you get out on the course, and I'd watched her swing before we got in the classroom, and she looked like a robot going through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, step 7, step 8. And I went, okay. The next time she's out on the tee, she said, I don't have to think about any of those. I said, just feel like you're skipping a rock. Boom, beautiful swing. So those what instructions and those feels that we already know what they feel like are ideal to get us to move through golf swing. So I hope that was helpful. Any other questions or comments?
I remember that list. I know we were in that little room down below the clubhouse.
That's right.
Right.
Check everything off on the list. Gavin, do you have any other comments on that?
No, but you just somehow suddenly made it seem such a simple analogy. I mean, it's one obviously that I've used. Whether it's there's a lot of things you can relate to with the golf swing, but yeah, it can be very simple if we associate it with feelings that we know, exactly as you said.
Thank you. And if you're wondering if that's just for amateurs, you can look in the book by Ben Hogan and the illustrations that show him basically throwing something sidearm like he's skipping a rock.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty good golfer, as in one of the best ever. So it works at all levels.
Hogan and John Jacobs, I mean, it's they're never going to get away from that. That's still the root of it, isn't it? The old lessons are the best.
I had someone who came and said, "Oh, my instructor told me to swing like I'm swinging inside of a barrel." And I said, "Oh, your instructor told you that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he may have gotten it from somewhere, and the place he may have gotten it is from Percy Boomer, who wrote it in a book 120 years ago that said, 'Swing like you're standing in a barrel.'" So I've always said there's nothing new under the sun in golf instruction.
He was great, Percy Boomer, yeah.
Except maybe Bryson DeChambeau.
He's just pumping it up, isn't he? I mean, he's getting everybody else doing the same now. It's funny watching Sergio last week driving and seeing how McIlroy's hitting it now. It's just taking it all to another level. It's nice.
It's true, and there always have been also idiosyncratic ways of doing it. There's kind of the mainstream, and then this guy Mo Norman, who was definitely on the autism spectrum, and when he set up, he held the club head 1.5 feet behind the ball. He didn't hold that club head right. If that's the ball, we usually put it right here. This was way out 1.5 feet, and that's where he started his swing from. And he basically, Bryson DeChambeau's swing is somewhat similar in that his arms were very much straight extended, and the club didn't go through his fingers; it went across the palm of his hand. So, there's something different for everybody. A professional named Bobby Locke was one of the best putters ever, and he hooked his putts. He didn't bring the putter through square. So it's not so much about how you do it as it is what you're trying to accomplish. Follow those instructions and find the what that works best for you, because it's never the same for everybody. Well, let's wrap up on that. So thank you all so much for your kind attention.
You have time for one more question?
Oh, yes, Steve.
Steve, yes.
There, hi.
Hi. So, yeah, I didn't realize I could talk, that I wasn't muted. So I have the what, right? Real simple key when I do it. I hit the ball great, and just like out of Zen Golf, make my practice swing behind the ball, take a breath, walk up, head is clear, and I can make that move about, 30% of the time, and then I go back. The other 70% is old habits, yanking the whole body, and I'm just puzzled.
Steve, what is your what instruction?
Rotate the left arm, left forearm, and wrist and hand.
See, to me, that's a how instruction.
Okay.
That's a how I'm going to do it. And what does that produce as far as the club head goes when you do that?
Just a really easy swing and great contact, good ball flight, little fade.
When you say rotate the left arm, do you mean on the way back or on the way through?
On the way from the top of the downswing. So just, so my arm goes from pointing right, it'll go under, and I make a good follow thing. That's all I think about. Everything falls into place.
Okay, so that can become a what instruction, that's what it feels like, that your left hand is pointing in one direction and then in the other.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't tell yourself how to move your left arm that way. That's okay. Well, let's call that a what instruction. So what the question is, what gets in the way of that happening that other 70% of the time?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I don't, my mind is basically blank. I don't think about trouble at all. I don't think about hitting a bad shot. It's almost like.
Do you have in mind to have your left arm feel the way you have it feeling?
When I do my practice swing, yes.
And then when you do the actual swing, only 30% of the time?
I guess maybe sometimes I think about it, but generally I'm like, okay, I'm good. Now just swing.
I see what you're saying. So you don't have that in mind before you take the actual swing?
No, not usually.
Okay, and so what does it feel like happens when when it doesn't produce the way you did your practice swing?
It feels like my shoulders usually, and sometimes my hips. I come right over the top and don't give my arm a chance to rotate.
Okay. So my best guess, and I would like Gavin's input on that. It's hard to do an analysis this far away.
Sure.
But from what you just said, it sounds like it's a sequencing issue. And that is, maybe you get a little quick from the top and don't finish your transition. And if that happens, then everything gets out of whack. And so that when you are trusting that feeling and in your rhythm, right, that you reproduce it like you did your practice swing with the same sequencing. But when you get a little excited, then maybe you get a little quick and your upper body beats your lower body, and then your hands do things to try to save it, and all sorts of things can happen.
Right.
Maybe you decide this one I'm going to hit a little extra far, and you start harder with your legs than your upper body. Or you think I'm going to really pace this one, and you use your hands a lot to hit it. Anything out of the ordinary. And that's why in the Zen Golf chapter, you can see nothing special, nothing extra.
Mm-hmm.
So I would look for those as the clues.
Okay, you think, but it feels like it's more subconscious than like I'm trying to hit it harder or farther. Like
yeah, that can
be reliable, 30 years of bad.
Okay, well, that's an interesting one. Now, part one, you may, in fact, it may very well be in the back of your mind and subconscious and not in the foreground that this wanting to hit it a little farther or wanting to be a little more careful because you do have you did see that fairway bunker there, or you did see that pond there. And you're not thinking directly about it, but it's still registered. So that is a possibility. And the other is that, and interestingly, sometimes we just revert. It's revert to old habits. Now, if that old habit was coming over the top then especially in situations where you lose focus on the target, lose focus on your feel key, and just kind of go whatever, that old habit may show up.
Okay.
You see, so I would work on that intentionality that I talked about. Work on that visualization, and really before you step into the bowl, remind yourself in a simple, we'll call it a shortcut key. If you have your left, left down, left through, say something like that. Left down, left through, or left rotate through. And just remind yourself of that before you actually take your last look at the target.
Okay.
Right? And maybe just the words left arm. Remind you.
All right.
But hold, but then focus mainly on send it to the target.
Okay.
Send it to the target. Send it to the target and have that visualization in mind.
Okay. I'll definitely try that. Say one quick observation that I think you'll appreciate. So I played this morning, 2 older gentlemen. So 17th hole was cart path only, cart path's on the right. So the world's golfer gets there and says, I'm probably going to hit it left. Sure enough, it's a beautiful shot right down the left side. It's like, I can't walk over there. So I told the other guy, I said, just tell yourself, don't hit it right. He hit the most beautiful drive about 10 feet off the cart path. I said, see, works every time.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody. Great to meet you. Met before, and great to see you again. And we will do this, when is it, Ken? 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today. And I think that may be the last one for a little while. We may take the holidays off. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Dr. Joe.
Bye.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks.